Superb. Thank you, everyone. Good evening to everyone. It's been a long day, but we'll keep it as exciting as the award ceremony, which we are also looking forward for everyone, right? Okay. Uh, so this panel is focusing completely on the leadership, risk governance, and the strategic priorities as a general counsel on the high level, what you see, right? So, like for example, in Harvard Business School, you are hammered with some 5 principles. They always say that every leader, whether you are a general counsel, CEO of a company, or a chief marketing officer or anybody, 5 components is what is required for your success. Number one is the leadership. So leadership is all about your leadership being a mentorship, backing up your team, you are a role model, leading from the front, etc. Second is a strategy on your personal growth. How do you lay out your career? How do you then grow the company, etc. Third is the practice of culture. It's a culture of ethics, integrity, morality, doing the right thing. If you want to run a long term company, then you require this practice of culture, right? We have so many names who are outside India. The companies have gone to a no norm because of the non practice of the right culture. Fourth is your operational efficiency. So today we are talking about AI, or probably you have some non-productive or academic or administrative work which you can outsource to tech, so that you can more focus on your productive work on your productive time. And fifth is execution. So you plan, but if you don't execute, you're not a good leader. So leadership, strategy, culture, operational efficiency, and execution. That's what the stalwart panel we have today. They are all well-known general counsels of the country. They've spared their time. They have done their metal work at the organization, gone through ups and downs where the organizations were in the news for the wrong reasons, for the right reasons, etc. And they have laid out all on the leadership, where conceptually earlier the CEO of the company would come and say that I will take a business call. It's no more now, because one bad news can cost your stocks in the stock market, right? So that's the leadership skills, the risk and governance appetite, and the strategic priorities which we will discuss today. All right. So just going before for the first question to my panelist, just give you some raw data statistics of how legal role is now increasing in the organization and how it is globally now recognized. So Indian corporate sector is projected to grow at about 9% annually through 2026. Over 72% of the Indian CEOs expect legal leaders to play a strategic, not reactive role. 65% of the Indian general counsels now participate directly in enterprise strategy discussions. 58% of the boards say regulatory complexity requires stronger general counsel board alignment. 47% of the general counsel in India now manage cross-functional teams beyond legal. 60% of large Indian enterprise plan to invest in legal technology in next 18 months. Leadership roles for general counsels in mergers and acquisitions have risen by 40%. 54% of high growth organizations rate the general counsel as a culture influencer. 3 out of 5 Indian boardrooms prefer general counsels with business, digital, and governance fluency. That's what the power of the general counsel and the legal role we are talking about on the leadership side. And my first question goes to Debashish. We have discussed about the strategic role of the general counsel. We have seen now the numbers, what importance has now been placed by the organization, CEOs, boards of the company, chairman. Everybody sees the governance news by way of newsletters in the morning, emailers. So that's the board's role of general counsels. Now, how do you see the boards in India are expecting the general counsel to be also an early warning system and a strategic interpreter of India's fast changing law? You have DPDP rules coming up, you have something on AI, some modifications in intermediary guidelines happens, labor codes have been introduced, overnight some guidelines comes in from Reserve Bank of India, etc. AI governance, competition, etc. That will impact in next 12 to 18 months. how do you become a early warning systems for the company and the board on these aspects? Your views.
Thank you, Zameer, and thank you, BW Legal World, for making me a part of this stellar panel. Actually, a lot of experienced GCs over here. So I think it's a fascinating question, Zameer, what you have asked actually, and let me answer it in parts actually, and let me give some practical context also into it. So the question what you have asked, I think this is something which I have lived in last week only. So we had an extensive audit committee meeting, and in that audit committee meeting, basically we had few agendas. The first agenda was with respect to this entire regulatory landscape, what changes, what we are seeing, the DPDP Act, the AI governance, the labor codes, and since it's a fintech, I come from a fintech organization. So basically, we have a dual role of seeing the financial compliances as well as the tech compliances. So the next piece was with respect to cyber strategy, cyber resilience, and all. So when I have made the presentation from my legal team's end, basically the presentation what it covered, it was not only the legal part of it, but how it is making sense to get it converted into business strategy. So what we call it in our organization, basically it's more of a LBS kind of thing, which is legal business and strategy. So the most important aspect was the questions what were asked to me, like when I have given a presentation on DPDP. So I have given that background saying ki like the DPDP Act with the rules coming in three phases. So first starting with the data protection board, then the consent management 1 year from that 1 year from now, and 1.5 years from now the entire rest of the provisions. So I've given the explanations in terms of our role as a data fiduciary or our role as a data processor, and how we are managing the data breach compliances obligations, and also the data localization. The first thing they have asked, are you working in siloed manner or are you working with your team, with the entire team, cross-functional teams and all?
Do they also inquire on the fines?
Absolutely. So basically, the first question in terms of data breach, they have asked me, are you working with the cyber security team on the data localization things, and also they have asked on the data verification and background, are you working with the HR team and all? So when my presentation I had given, I have included everything, and all the parts were covered, like even from the product perspective, what kind of what you call as privacy by design and all these things are getting implemented or not. So the moot point is, it is not about a legal presentation, it is a cross-functional presentation that they wanted to, and they're very senior audit committee members. They wanted to understand. So that was the first point, to address your regulatory concern and all. The second part, basically, in terms of the role, the tectonic shift, what we are seeing, the role of GC now, and what the board also expects to see, that how I am handling my stakeholders. Like if I talk about a stakeholder for a GC, it is not only about the shareholders or the board members and all. It covers the employees, it covers the vendors, it covers the suppliers, it covers your private equity investors or strategic investors, everyone. So whether I'm having a right kind of a mindset and approach in terms of handling all these issues. I just give a typical example. Like in one of the association what we have with your strategic partners, we have a MSA where there is exclusivity clause actually, and that exclusivity clause was actually not helping us in terms of going ahead with the competitors, in terms of reaching out to them for business with the competitors. So since I joined this organization much later to this particular MSA, so I find it really challenging how we can channel that, because marketing team used to come with all the competitors bids and all, say like, we can go with those competitors. So we are not able to do that because of that restriction in that clause. So basically, when we are drafting that clauses, we have to see that we are covering the business aspects also in mind, and not only wearing the legal hat.
Did you advise them on the abuse of position also?
Absolutely.
That's the
and
way.
we got it changed actually. You made an amendment and we got it changed also. And the third most important aspect is that when you talk about risk mitigation strategies, it's not only about the legal risk. Legal risk is one when you talk about the regulatory and aspects and all. But you have to see the cyber resilience, cyber security risk, the data breach risk, your financial, operational, other risks and all. So the sum and the long and short of my answer actually at the first instance is that it has to be a cross teaming kind of environment. You have to understand the business both from legal, business, and strategic front. And just to end on this, as the quote often goes, probably in many organizations, if you don't have the accountability and overall culture into it, then basically culture and accountability eats your other aspects for breakfast. So that you have to understand. So that is my first comment on that. I'm happy to hear from others here.
No, I agree with you. So that's a Harvard quote only. Culture eats strategy for breakfast is the quote. Basically, the idea is that, like that Warren Buffett said, that you require a person to be There are three criteria where he said one, two, and second is integrity. He said if the third is not there, then the first two, energy, etc., intelligence, energy, and integrity. If integrity is not there, then intelligence and energy is not the right thing to ask for. Uh,
Just
yes.
final point, like I have my board members who are up 75 plus and all,
Okay.
and I'm just find it amusing. They're so much curious to know what DPDP obligations, AI governance, and all these guidelines. They are curious to know about it. So where
But
we are at a much younger stage,
but
if we are
that's-
not putting that effort in investments,
that's
obviously
very
we'll be at a
wonderful.
falling place.
Very wonderful
So
for
just
a
wanted
board
to-
because they are governance conscious, and plus you have those multiple projects, cross team projects which are going on. That's the way you have pulled out a solution on your leadership part as a general counsel. Preeti, question to you is that the general counsels of the company are gradually getting into the roles of CEOs of the company, managing directors of the company, board members. I myself a board member in Singapore, UAE, etc., cross country. Uh, Today, and this was a trend earlier in United States, where if a candidate has a law qualification and he goes for a position of a CEO, they would prefer the person with a law background because the expectation was that the CEO of the company who knows the law will better manage the company, right? Now, when you think about in today's time, governance is seen as a value driver and not a burden, okay? Because the companies, CEOs, and everybody has now recognized that it's hardcore that if a bank gets a fine and it gets reported, it's not only the board member, but if you have big investors, Blackstone, BlackRock, etc., they will put down an email to you questioning what went wrong, please report, right? These are conscious things. How do you think, as a general counsel, you can encourage business leaders to see governance as a value driver and not a burden? Because at that time it's looked upon as administrative, tedious, burdensome, till you break some breaking news and then you realize the importance of governance. How do you do that?
Very interesting. Just one thing to add to your what you said as a comment.
Thoda upar.
It's working. Hello. Well, I'm loud enough generally. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm
normally
saying
Preeti.
it's not only your PE investors. I think the question is being asked a global organization also with a lot of internal stakeholders where you kind of get asked this question. So I think very good question. I think we've seen a long shift. It's not something that traditionally the role the legal function was playing or a general counsel was playing has gone a fundamental change. Thanks to I think social media and the news that the kind of quick news that you get in, any kind of wrong news for an organization, it's out in the newspaper and everybody gets to know. So I think that's kind of a one of the points for an organization to see where do they see themselves. Fine. So I think, and when I as a general counsel would look at how do I build that credibility with my stakeholders internal primarily, where I tell them that doing the right thing or being compliant is not something which is burdensome, but it is going to get you real value is by making them understand what I'm bringing to the table. Fine, that's very important. So I think with ESG laws, when it came in, still I know a lot of organizations, mid-sized organizations, see ESG as a burdensome thing because that brings cost to them. But when you see the benefits in the long run, they reap so many benefits that possibly it outweighs the cost. Fine, and you look at it more from a holistic perspective. So I think when it comes to my organization, I can give an example. So let's say, for example, we talk about supplier due diligence, and that's one very important aspect of our working, where we have a complete program as to what kind of third parties do we work with, due diligence program in place. Now, if I roll it out, as to say, okay, this is something I'm saying as legal and compliance, we have to roll it out. You may not get that buy-in from the organization, fine, from other stakeholders, because they see you as a burden, because you're trying to impose new things on the organization. And possibly for them, it may mean you're delaying the process. You need to onboard the supplier very fast. There are deliveries to be made. And, legal and compliance is pushing something which may derail the process. That's where when you kind of make them understand as to why you're doing that. Because if you get in a wrong supplier, you don't do a proper due diligence, you may end up working with a supplier who may be known for non-compliance, who may bring you reputational damage, which is damaging for you in the long run. And I give some classic examples within my organization all the time, and I'm sure everybody is learned, everybody is aware. Long time back, it's been many years, there was a news around Foxconn as a supplier for Apple. Fine. It was in the headline and the front page of the newspaper that they were non-compliant with the labor practices, I think around, working conditions or something. And while Apple would not have endorsed those non-practices, for sure being a brand that they are, but they were also, the news headline says Apple's major supplier. Do you want to see yourself there, or do you want to associate yourself with suppliers where you don't get into news like this? So that is where, when you educate your stakeholders to see that why do we incorporate a new process or bring around new compliance practices, something like a DPDP. I think what he has done is another fantastic thing. But all of us, I'm sure in different contexts, would have done is educating your stakeholders that the importance of compliance. And like our panelists before were talking about, when you tell them about a 250 crore penalty that the act is coming up with, obviously it brings value if you're compliant and you don't want to end up paying high penalties. So I think that's one important thing, is that you navigate or make your stakeholders understand the value that you're bringing to the table by telling them the stories of cost and the negative reputation that brings with not being kind of being compliant. So that's how I would say that that's how things are progressing, where now boards are understanding or stakeholders are understanding that being compliant and following the legal and compliance advice is not a burden, but something which will give them success in the long run, reputational, protect them from reputational harm, may also help you with not having disruptions. Because if you engage with somebody who is kind of non-compliant, tomorrow the government may say shut down the plant till the time you fix it.
Absolutely.
So you don't want to get
and
into
that's
that
what
zone.
happened with Paytm.
Yeah,
Exactly. The RBI asked them to stop the business right on the day, and they had consequences for that.
So that's where they understand the value that you are bringing by ensuring that you're compliant.
Correct. I think that's a large message. One I see, and this is a drastic change, because we have been here for around more than 2-3 decades, and the drastic change what we are seeing, the board having an oversight, the cross team functioning, the conscious awareness about the risk governance to the company organization itself. Paytm, one of the examples we took. These have all gone a very wrong way, and I think much has been also contributed because of social media and the news which is available the next second. That has played its role itself. But again, on the numbers also, it's not only about the companies doing wrong, it's also the regulator which is now into action. So today, Reserve Bank of India, SEBI, or any authority like CCI, etc., if there is a news that if you book an Uber via using iPhone versus Samsung, the competition commission is very watchful of this situation. Let me give you some 2-3 numbers before I go to the next question on geopolitical. Right? SEBI has increased enforcement actions by 35% in last 3 years. Right? So if they were getting a 100 complaint, it's gone up by 35%. India's board diversity norms now apply to 1,000 listed companies. 51% of governance failures in India stem from poor risk legal oversight. Whistleblower complaints in Indian corporates have grown by 22%. 40%, as Debashish pointed out about the boards also, 40% of board want deeper compliance dashboards curated by General Counsel. That's the trending situation we are there. Going to the next question, we face this situation of political situation. We face changing regulations which are flowing in every day. Bhawna, my question to you is that with this ever increasing complexity around global political scenario, right? Today, if you're doing a business with Iran, or you have been buying Russian oil, or you are trading with certain country and something goes wrong, and there are changing regulations. GDPR, of course, has been there as draconian for a lot of people, but because of the level of the fines they charge. What kind of mitigation strategies are working well for the legal department to convince the organization that either we follow this kind of business or there are consequences to follow? Your views on that.
Thanks. So I think we obviously live in a fairly complex world, and when I say complex, I think post-pandemic or even while pandemic was on, there was just complexity, and now it's increased multifold with your Russia-Ukraine war, with what happened in US in terms of the HB1 visas, your tariffs, etc. So that conversation today is real for all of us who are doing roles in legal and compliance, regulatory functions. And those conversations are real not just because you're being asked to interpret law. I think you are being asked to see how that law then transforms into a actionable, doable risk, not doable risk. Every point of view have to now bring on the table. So gone are the days where you would just be told, send me a memo on tariffs and what kind of impact this will have. Now the expectation is that where the organization gets impacted, and the audit committee questions are interesting. They don't want you to pitch the regular dashboard. They want the GC, the compliance person who's sitting in front of them, to tell them, how are you mitigating this risk? What is your short-term view? What is your long-term view? So I think, to my mind, the roles that all of us play, from the traditional GC roles where you were responsible for contracts, you were responsible for compliance, is now more and more complex, and interesting times ahead for us.
I think, and just to support her view on further statistics we have today for the day, 1 out of 3 listed companies face some form of regulatory notice now. 62% of investors evaluate governance as a top investment criteria, right? One of the examples Preeti gave on ESG. Previously, when you used to have investors putting 5,000 crore in your company, they would give ESG as a guidelines in annexure. Those nomenclature of guidelines have now become obligation, which means if you don't follow ESG, if you breach any norms of environment, social and governance, whether it's a posh complaint, whether it's anything to do with the fraud in the company, etc., they can terminate the contract and call back for the money. That's the difference in the level we have found. ESG non-compliant penalties have increased by 30%. Board and General Counsel closed door sessions have increased by 45% to strengthen oversight, and which we will now peculiarly see. The board wants to sit down with the General Counsel of the company to understand, was there any fraud, because they understand that either the General Counsel reports to somebody as a CEO or a managing director. This is what JP Morgan addressed it very well. So the General Counsel of the JP Morgan company reports directly to the chairman of the board. So none of the CEOs or managing directors can come and say, this is my business call, please sign the contract. Because his reporting is directly to the chairman of the board. He is as neutral and independent to say to a chief executive of a company, you can't do this because this is not legal and therefore not permitted in my opinion, right? That's the independence movement we have seen. Amar, you have seen the whole world, you have seen the heydays dealing with NEC Corporation, uh, government affairs are involved, government people are involved, lot of sensitivity is there on the leadership side of it. Uh, One is the AI world which we are seeing, but generally I wanted to know, how do you steer on this leadership side of a general counsel, keeping governance in mind, risk in mind, compliances in mind, when there are projects like DG Yatra, right, which is one of the app which is made by a company. Uh, the government wants to launch the project, the government also wants to have access to the data, but then there is risk, compliance, governance which is involved. If there is a data breach, it can be in the news that NEC Corporation was one of the companies which is handling this. How do you steer your management and board to also upkeep with that while launching such massive projects?
Thanks, Zameer. So I'll keep the discussion very generic, not confined to my organization because of obvious reasons.
4-5 pointers from you, words of wisdom.
So just keeping it generic, uh, general counsels, and this is not a new trend. In fact, this trend has been there for last 10 years now. general counsels are now becoming very, very integral to the business and very close to the senior management. The way regulations are coming up in India, the way regulators have become oversensitive in today's world, every management, the shareholders, the board, everybody is wanting the general counsels to apprise them of any kind of a potential risk in the system. And therefore, general counsels overall has a very, very critical role to play, because if anything goes wrong in the organization, the first question is to the general counsel. Now, general counsels have also a big role in keeping the management ahead of time. You just mentioned about the artificial intelligence. It's a huge disruptor that's coming up. Organizations are incorporating artificial intelligence into their core businesses. There are data which are going to show that incorporation of artificial intelligence into the system, into the core business areas, has increased productivity. Right. So all these things, the general counsels are grappling with it. End of the day, general counsels are required to keep the management, the leaders, the stakeholders apprised of the potential risk that comes up, and that's where the leadership is all about. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And but just from the perspective of the board, how much do you interact and how much is conscious the board about these compliances? And if there is any reflection of non-compliance, what's the up to down instruction?
So you are right, Zameer.
You're in a mammoth organization, so yeah.
No, any organization.
Any organization
any organization
of
which
your
has
scale.
a board and which is see, I tell you, the major difference today, Zameer, which is very different from what the situation was 10 years back.
I agree.
15 years back. There were organizations who used to take a position that, okay, there is a non-compliance, let's handle it. Today, because of severe regulatory actions that is coming up, and we talk about all the agencies, ED, SFIO, CBI, EOW, now Competition Commission you talked about. We didn't see Competition Commission being so aggressive 5 years back.
Absolutely.
It has suddenly become, and I'll give you another very interesting aspect. Today, what is happening is one regulator is talking to another regulator.
Yes.
So there is one set of offense which will have multiple subset of offenses, and therefore everybody will get involved. And that's a huge problem for the board, huge problem for the organization. So the situation has changed because of the severe regulatory actions, and therefore even the smallest of the organizations wants to play very safe. And the best thing to play safe is to remain on the right side of the law.
Agree. I think that's very well said. So the board itself is now a conscious board. Since 2014, when the Companies Act changed, I think there was some touch point to that. But now I think the news on governance is too much circulated on the fines and penalties, and all regulatory authorities are also very proactive. You never know, at one point of time, we were told by CCI, you never know that your company must be under some study of abuse of dominant position. So that's the kind of level of interactions are there at the regulatory body. To go to you, Kumudini, you work for a company known as Oil India Limited, traditional sector, sensitive sector, lot of data, sensitive data which is available. In your organization, as a true leader, you have adopted artificial intelligence in the legal team. Just give me a scenario. How did you convince the management, or how your management was proactive that AI should be embedded in the legal department of Oil India Limited? We see it as a traditional sector with sensitive data. How did you achieve that as a great leader?
Okay. I think in the business sector, everything is driven by the cost. So you would know the crude price have stabilized between $60 to $65. Our cost will remain the cost. We are a PSU, which are certain additional burden of the governance and the compliances. So in any business, there is a cost factor. The cost optimization is there. So in today's world, if you think of optimizing the cost, we are looking something around 1,000 crore cost optimization. So where do I cost optimize? That is technology. That is a simple answer. be it in my GNR, geological data, be in my drilling processes, be in my exploration processes, be in my legal processes. So we are on a spree to adopt business process modules where we are cutting on the redundant processes and automizing the processes so that we can optimize the cost and stay the profitable as we are for next 20 years down the line, because at least 20 years down the line I have to maintain my profitability. So that kind of a vision we prepared in house, and then we thought of cutting the cost, because crude we could have visibility for next 2 years, it is 60 to 65 only, it is not going 80 85.
That resulted in saving cost,
Yes,
adopting
yes,
AI.
yes.
Wow.
The process is still going on, because digitalizing the process is a long-term process. You have 10 process, you build in five more, 10 more. So it's an ongoing process. It is still going on. And
But as a leader in an organization on the legal side of it, did you see enhancement of efficiency and productivity by using AI?
yes,
Wow.
definitely. Technology does help. To my view, technology should serve me. Like, technology should be my slave. It should not sit on my hand. If I have that capability of training the technology to this kind of a perspective, then definitely technology is going to aid your efficiency and your operational efficiency also, and
Just-
cost optimization.
Just to add here is that one is the efficiency and productivity. Did it help you on the turnaround time, and are you only using for India or even global jurisdiction?
AI
AI
we are the
technology.
company which has got presence in seven countries. So all the jurisdictions, the work pertains, it is relating to my work. I am not
Wow.
jurisdiction specific. It is only for India or abroad. So it is across my work profile.
Oh wow, wonderful, wonderful. So I think the leadership, what we were looking at from this particular forum, and then I'll leave you with the strategic priorities for 2026, because that is what we will really give you in the last month of the year. That what should be your priority for 2026 in accordance with the statistics and survey we have for general counsel, and what's going to come for future for the legal, right? The first aspect we spoke about the board consciousness with Debashish. Second was about governance has now become a value driver. Third was on the mitigation side of it. Fourth was on the leadership, leading the organization, CEO, board through and throughout for being a conscious board and the organization on governance, and actually implementation of artificial intelligence in a mammoth organization like Oil India, and also using it for the efficiency and productivity. That is what the great leaders here are leading about. We are conscious of time, and therefore we wanted to really give you the tangibles. Instead of more questions, we wanted to give you one question, but a lot of inputs in that from the experience point of view. For 2026, when we go, the strategic priorities which were laid down by statistics and surveys on the legal front, on the legal side, legal fraternity, what's coming in on the law or the legal side of it for the organizations and company is the following. Digital first legal transformation is the top priority of 70% of the general counsels. Contract automation will reach about 50 to 60% adoption in large organization. Over 1 billion is expected to be invested into Indian legal tech market by 2026. 55% of the Indian general counsels plan to centralize compliance into enterprise-wide platforms. Legal teams are expected to upskill in AI, data and analytics by over 60%. Indian M&A market is projected to grow about 25% annually, increasing GC involvements. Litigation cost in India is going to rise by 12 to 14% each year. 70% of the GCC India centers are adding legal compliance and ethics units. Cross-industry collaboration on compliance and digital governance is growing 30% year on year. This is for 2026 on the legal side of it. Thanks once again to all the great leaders here. They have mammoth years of voluminous years of experience And thank you for your time and the views which you have shared. Thank you so much to the audience also for listening us. Thank you very much.